Hi there. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm your host, Ryan Vanderhei, and I've learned some of my most valuable life lessons from my favorite TV shows and movies. Sure, these works of art entertain us, offer us an escape, and even tap into our emotions. There's often one E that's missing.
Enlightenment. If viewed from a different perspective, these stories and their characters can help us learn and develop as human beings. I'm your co-host, Joe Parente, and our mission with this podcast is to share these unique perspectives with you so that you can grow from our show and our chat.
The topic of today's discussion, Game of Thrones and transforming your weaknesses into your strengths. As always, there'll be some spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, first off, what's the matter with you? You're missing out. But second of all, just be forewarned. And as always, too, please make sure you leave a like, rating, or review wherever it is you listen, as it really helps the show. Shall we begin?
The answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame.
Most men and women will yield to the strong currents sucking them into the seas of ruin. Only the strongest in mind and spirit will swim against that current. That's a quote from Ted Dekker, American author. What do you think about when you hear that? Most men and women will yield to the strong currents sucking them into the seas of ruin. Only the strongest in mind and spirit will swim against the current.
I think there's a lot to that. I think, and we're going to be talking a lot about adversity, but nothing tests you like it. And I think that's pretty much what that's saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think that not everyone's going to be drowned or completely swept away by it, but it is definitely something that will expose character, motivation, drive, all kinds of things. So I think there's a lot to that quote. It's an intense quote, man.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting too about the choice that we have facing certain situations in our life, adversity, and choosing to persevere, because that's a choice you make. It's not
Totally
it's
great.
easy to fold. It's easy to lie down. It's easy to give up. That's the easy way. It's more difficult to stand at it and face it and continue to, persevere despite the challenges that you're facing. I think that that's something, certainly our character here, Tyrion, which we're going to get into later, something that he obviously exhibits a personal quality of his own, but even throughout the show, you can look at other characters that lack that characteristic and they get swallowed.
Absolutely.
I think life has a way of doing that to us, right? The people who,
For sure.
lie down or fold do tend to get trampled over, do tend to get swallowed up by life because it could be unrelenting.
For sure. And within the case of Game of Thrones, it's extreme because that's a really violent world they live in. You could say ours is as well, but it's much more so.
Yeah.
We meet people on the road, if we see them walking their dog, whatever, it's a non-event. But, in Westeros, that could be the end of your life. If you back the wrong king or what have you.
Any person you meet.
Exactly. And so all characters on that show have to have some level of fortitude, and if they don't, they're eaten up.
Yeah.
But Tyrion is rather remarkable.
He is. I think just in terms of my own personal life, this is something that is deeply personal to me. Just in terms of, when I started in my early 20s, I started going through, I guess you could call it, I don't know, I don't like the word awakening. I don't like spiritual awakening or such. I suddenly had access to things that I did not prior.
What do you mean?
I think in my early childhood, teens, I was just going through the motions of life. I was just allowing things to affect me and just kind of bouncing off and just going through with the motions, if you will.
Okay.
That's a good way to explain it, going through the motions. In my early 20s, I suddenly had access to a lot more of my mind and my brain and my personality and things. And it, in the beginning, became very dangerous, right? Like I started to have a lot of anxiety and panic attacks.
Because do you start to feel the responsibility of what it is to be an adult, perhaps, or to be someone who has a mind and has responsibility for what you do and your actions?
I don't want to say that I wasn't conscious before my 20s.
Okay.
But it was there was a new level of it, I guess, if that's not the right way to put it, but I was now self-aware. That's what
Okay.
I'm trying to get
Okay.
to.
Okay.
Prior to that, just kind of moving through the motions of life. Once
Which makes sense.
I became self-aware and I was like,
Okay.
I'm this person moving through this life. What does death mean? What does life mean? All these profound things started to weigh on my conscience. As I'm trying to go through college, I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out what I'm going to do with my life.
Yeah.
It was a big transformative process.
For sure.
But I think if I'm assessing the topic of today's discussion, which is turning your weaknesses into strengths, for so long, I thought that made me weak. I thought that was a weakness or an ailment of mine, that I had this anxiety, these panic attacks. I thought that made me less than, or I wasn't going to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And then it's not until really, truthfully, recently, probably within the last few years or so, that I've started to rewire that perspective into, no, this can be my strength. It's why I'm so creative. It's why I'm a good writer. I come up with these ideas and I put them into paper and I can troubleshoot and do so many different things because my mind is the way that it is. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be able to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. I think also, look, when you start to feel anxious or what have you, it's like you're hitting an inner wall, right? And so you're kind of learning what your boundaries are. And it's beautiful to have those tested. And then you put them out a little bit further and you're going to test those and you put those out a little bit further because you come across those kinds of feelings, what have you, but your capacity to handle more is just going to increase. You know, as long as you've got some decent mental health and you've got a good support structure and it's not like, you know, living on the street or out of your car or something. Like if you have the fundamentals of Maslow's hierarchy, you know, met,
Sure.
then you're going to be able to weather them and be a little bit smarter. And those will be the building blocks for greater creativity or just more efficiency at work, or also, quite frankly, and this is where we can really get into Tyrion in so many ways, can make you just a better human being, a better friend, you know, better son.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
What have you.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. I use this analogy all the time with myself. It's like I liken it to like a wild animal.
Okay.
My brain is a wild animal. And so
I like it.
if left unchecked, it's going to be, you know, on the loose, rabid. It's going to fight for survival, all these things, all these sort of surface level things that we kind of anxiety comes to, right? But then if you're able to tame, like when the first people, I don't know who it was, who decided one day, like, oh, there's these wild dogs, we should just bring them into our home. And, you know, like, who was that guy? But it's really true. It really rings true because if you're able to control it, if you're able to get a handle on it, can become your best friend, man's best friend.
Wow, I agree. It can. I think that for me, I don't look at it as taming. I look at it as understanding and working with, because to me, as I've gotten older, I've gotten to appreciate more and more how clever the mind is. And so I look at it as a phenomenal instrument, if you will, or tool, which carries a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that what has helped me over the years, what I've seen, is being as straight with it as possible. Like, even if I can't be straight about things with other people, whatnot, as long as I'm straight with myself, it seems to help my mind quiet.
When do you think that you found that out? When do you think that happened for you?
After copious years of lying to myself. Just because I had how should I put this? A colorful youth. I'm actually quite fortunate to be alive. I did a lot of really profoundly stupid things.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, for another time or maybe for episodes, but I just got to a point where I realized I'd completely backed myself into a corner with lies and mistakes and just BS.
Okay.
And I realized that I had to kind of come clean with myself, or it was just going to get worse.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there is something to coming to a point. I mean, I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. I kind of, although I don't know, obviously we don't know each other's situations and scenarios, but I had something similar too, where I was kind of a burnout as a kid and a
Okay.
teen. I was kind of just didn't give a crap about school
Okay.
and like authority and things like that. It wasn't until, and I don't know what it was. I mean, I had gotten arrested my junior year of high school.
All right.
And so, yeah, that's what I mean, man. It was just, and so that I think maybe was the tipping point, the beginning of it. Like that's maybe where it started to shift because I continued a little bit on after that. But I think being in a courtroom, like I never saw myself in these scenarios. I'm like, me
Wow.
in this scenario, like
Good for
I'm
you.
reading like to the, you know,
Yeah.
swearing on the Bible. I'm gonna like, you know, tell the whole truth. And I'm like, why am I here? Like, I don't think I'm this guy that would be in this situation. I got my
Yet
public
there you
defender. Yet there I was. So that's kind of when it all switched for me. And I started to, oh, I want to go to college. I took college seriously. I, you know, studied and went to class. And
Yeah.
it was that shift.
Yeah.
So to your point, getting backed into a corner can really
For sure.
offer a lot of change and transformation.
For sure. It can. And in thinking about Tyrion,
Uh-huh.
it's such a complicated and nuanced character.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at his origin story. So yeah, born to the wealthiest family in Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
Again, tons of spoilers if you haven't seen it. Don't watch or listen to this.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, but you know, his mother dies giving birth to him. So instantly his father wants to throw him into the sea.
Yeah.
But really pats himself on the back for not.
Right.
You know, abuses him throughout his life, at least emotionally and
I
psychologically.
never threw you away.
But I didn't throw you away, so I'm a good dad.
Right,
You
right.
know? And Cersei hated him, you know, from the first moment. And so he could be so different. He could be absolutely bitter. He could be a spiteful, hateful imp. I mean, he didn't deserve that nickname at all.
Sure.
But he could have been that.
Yeah.
And the fact that he wasn't is fascinating. And to me, it made him, he really looked at people because he'd been through so much adversity. He knew what it was like to be on the margins. He knew what it was like to be not loved. He knew what it was to be ignored, to be made fun of.
Yeah.
And he understood that so very well that I was so touched by him, even in the first couple of episodes when he went to Winterfell.
Yeah.
And he related with Jon Stark, the bastard.
There was they
was a
both
bonding
they was
right
instantly as soon as they understood each other.
Instantly.
Yeah.
But then there are so many instances and so many episodes where he really can connect with such a broad range of people. And to me, he was the most human, and that had everything to do with how much adversity he went through.
Absolutely. 100%.
And I think that's what makes him the most phenomenal character. There's so many good ones in that show, but his is
it's the best one. Just hearing you talk about this, do you think there's something to that? Something to the underdog story, something to being written off? Because I think so many times in popular culture, in athletes, in, you know, CEOs, people who are sort of revered as like the best of the best, they've got a grit to them. They've got an origin story that's not so kind. They grew up in poverty, or there was domestic violence in the house. Like so many of the people that we know, they were homeless. I mean, all these different stories. There's something to that builds character. There's something to that builds that like grit, I guess you would call it.
I think you're absolutely right. I think you touched on something earlier, though. We have decisions, right? I mean, you could say that every door, there are inflection points all day long.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to have some kind of major event, a car crash or something, to have an inflection point. But you do have a moment where you can make a choice. And for me personally, having gone through certain things, I definitely have more compassion towards people.
Sure.
Just greater level of understanding. And I also give myself more grace because I see, even with good intent, even with, having learned some stuff, I still fall on my face. I still make blunders. I still say really dumb things.
Of course.
When
We're
will this
human.
end?
Yeah,
When? But
Yeah.
it is a choice, because I think also there are people who are just terminally pissed off in life.
It's easy, I think, in that scenario. It's exactly what you're saying. There's a decision. So there's millions of people who are going through the same thing that these stories that we hear of this person that grew up in poverty and homelessness and then made it out and is extremely successful. For every one of them, there's 10 million people who go through the same thing.
Exactly.
And so the best thing I think you can do is make the best of your situation. Because clearly those people, despite what they faced, Tyrion is a perfect example in written fiction.
Yeah.
He easily, like you said before, could have become that imp and he still had those
He did.
tendencies. I mean, he still loved a brothel and he still loved to drink.
Still committed patricide.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
Sure, he wasn't above that. But he made himself about so much more than that.
So much more.
And that speaks way more to his character than, say, somebody who didn't have that, who didn't face that, if you will.
Agreed. I think this is something that I wish I knew more of in life, is that I think there's so many extraordinary people out there that we'll never hear about.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying.
I think I just touched on something there.
I know
that are just that people who are quietly beautiful, who quietly help people who don't get any of the spotlight, who just move through this world and really make a difference.
Absolutely.
Like school teachers.
Oh, 100%.
The good ones, the ones who have a lot of
care,
heart, who really care.
Yeah,
what a huge difference they're going to make.
The impact that they have on the youth, the next generation, the world as a whole. I mean, and we don't pay these people enough, and that's a different story. But
no, we do not.
Where's the tax money going? Yeah. But anyway, it's just
it's
true. It's true. It's so true that there's silent heroes everywhere. People, absolutely. Nurses. I mean, there's people in every aspect and every outlook of life that are making such a difference that never get that kind of spotlight and go kind of under the radar. So I absolutely agree. We only see what's in popular media.
Yep. Yeah. You're making me think of someone I saw speak at this charity event, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Okay.
And I don't think I agree with his politics, but I can put that aside completely because he talked about his origin story, which was pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is really fantastic is he does give back. He does give his time and his attention because he's been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. That's what I mean. That's just another example. We could pluck people all day who have just they've been through a lot. They've experienced a lot of adversity, and that yet still he became who he was.
Yeah.
And to then be in that position and be aware of that and be willing and open to give back to the community in different ways, your time, your money, your effort, that speaks volumes to someone's character.
It does. And look, he might have attitude I'm not aware of, but from what I saw that night, there was some pretty good humility woven in there. Can I give another example of someone? Absolutely. I used to work for a nonprofit in Skid Row.
Oh, okay.
For a year and a half. Awesome. They're called Chrysalis. They do fantastic work.
Okay.
And I missed this. I went out for lunch. I came back and the place is buzzing. It's on Main Street in downtown. And Ryan Gosling had just walked by and looked at it and saw people coming in and out. And he said to one of my coworkers, "What is this place?" And she said, "Oh, it's Chrysalis. And here's the work we do with people who are formerly homeless or on drugs or have been incarcerated." He said, "Give me a tour."
Wow.
So she brought him in the building. And people are all, women fainting, but it was people.
I mean, if Ryan Gosling's in the building,
it's Ryan Gosling,
of course.
And he shook people's hands, and he asked them questions, and he talked to people, and he was there for almost the hour that I was gone.
Yeah,
and
you just missed it.
And I was so incredibly impressed by that because where we were downtown, I watched I was standing on the street corner. When was it? Maya Rudolph in Bridesmaids goes out to the middle of the street and drops.
Oh yeah,
I was standing right there
Whoa!
when it was being filmed.
No.
What is she doing?
Yeah.
You see her just, roll him,
That's
action.
so
She goes
bizarre.
out in the street and plops down.
Yeah.
Cut.
You're like,
Really?
what? That's it?
So we used to have people,
Wow.
there were people,
Popular spot.
shows that were, walking by.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who stopped.
Wow.
And I've become a lifelong fan of his.
Sure.
Just from doing that.
Yeah, because it's different when you see it on TV or you see it in movies or you see it in an interview.
Yeah.
They're
Exactly.
media trained. They're PR
Exactly.
trained. So you're not going to see them stepping out of line.
That's right.
You're only going to see the real true character when you catch him in a situation
Right.
like
And
that.
no cameras are rolling.
And there's no
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah.
He's not being paid to be there.
Nope.
He's just on his own accord
Yep.
deciding to walk in and explore
That's
something
right.
like that.
And this is before cell phones, so there was nobody holding up, taking a video. of it.
Right,
Not
right,
before cell phones, before good cell phones.
Sure. Before social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I
got you.
So yeah, just very impressive, and that's a guy who doesn't have to do that. I've heard that of Keanu Reeves too, and Keanu Reeves came from a very humble background.
Sure. And he's been through,
Yeah.
you want to talk about somebody who's been through a lot. It is amazing he's still the person he is.
Yep, and from all accounts, everything I've heard, he's a lovely human being. I wouldn't say that of Tyrion. I wouldn't say he's lovely, but he is remarkable.
And he's done what he's had to do to survive.
He did.
Which in Westeros, you have to. Everyone on that show has something. They have to have
Absolutely.
something that separates them from everyone else because you have to survive. It's the only way.
He does. I just, when we were talking about subjects for this,
Mm-hmm.
this is, I'm currently watching Game of Thrones for the third time because it's Game of Thrones.
I've seen it like 3 times too, I think.
Fair enough. And I will forego season 7 and 8. Anyway, a discussion for another time, perhaps. But, how he is with Sansa.
The
But,
relationship and the friendship they
And
have,
also, who stood up to Joffrey? Exactly no one but Tyrion. He is the only one who stood up to that, the brat that everyone was frightened of.
Yeah.
And here he is, half his size, even when, Joffrey was like, 13 or 14.
kid, yeah.
He was still twice as tall
Sure.
as Tyrion. But Tyrion didn't hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did at times because he wanted to keep his head on his shoulders. But he nobody else stood up to him.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Because he could see that kid was truly evil, like rotten to the core.
And I think so many times when you're, especially back in those days, I'm watching, or we just actually finished Shogun season 1, and we see there's a lot of parallels between Game of Thrones and Shogun.
Okay.
A lot of like the different families and their power, and there's the kings and all these different things. But it got me thinking, like, so many people fold to people of power back in the day. People didn't feel that they had the opportunity or the space or just even the ability to step up or speak your mind or say what you want to say to these people because there was that much power. So if Joffrey has the power to cut your head off, nobody's going to say anything.
Right.
Tyrion was the only one. Like
Tyrion
to
was
his
the
effect.
only one. Now, granted, Tyrion didn't grow up in Flea Bottom. So, he had built-in advantages.
Sure. Comes from a wealthy family.
Had he been born, to a different family and about, half a mile away,
Things would have been a lot different.
things probably would have been a lot different.
Sure.
So he definitely had, the benefits of wealth.
Yeah.
But again, you can do with it, you always have a decision.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a decision. If you don't mind, I'm going to segue a little bit into
Sure.
Look at what happened with Jaime when he lost his hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
He became more human,
Yeah. Exactly.
you know?
A little bit of adversity.
And if, would he and Brienne of Tarth bonded the way they did?
Because
If that hadn't happened? I don't
hated
think so.
him at the beginning.
Well, he was, to say he's arrogant, there's got to be a stronger word than him. But, he was.
Yeah, he really was like a very unlikable character at the beginning, and then
He sure was.
through what happens to him, that's when you kind of see a little bit of that
Yeah.
humility come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I think Brienne was, at least her character, seemed to be was she a good judge of character? I don't know.
She was very impressionable on him from the beginning, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like immediately There was something into what she represented for him.
That touched him, you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Even before he lost his hand.
100%.
Well, I think he had mad respect for her because...
That's what it is.
Yeah.
There was a level of respect immediately, just because
Very true.
she defied all odds.
Very true.
Like, here's this woman who's strong and who can fight
Yep.
and who can stand up for herself. And so I think he really respected that as a knight himself.
And when he came back and saved her, she was in that fighting pit. And
Yeah.
it was just, I loved watching that. But again, Tyrion stands out though, because you see human moments with, Jon Snow and Ygritte,
Yeah.
but that's so different.
Sure.
And Jon Snow kind of had that everyman kind of quality in certain ways. He could be your working day hero, kind of.
Sure.
I think.
Sure.
Being a bastard and all that.
Yeah.
But again, there was just something about, like, I really, how Tyrion, I brought it up before, but how Tyrion was with Sansa. He respected Ned Stark.
Mm-hmm.
He respected that family.
Yeah.
He was so mindful of the position that she was in and what it must have been like for her. Who else in that show was thinking of how things were for other people?
Yeah.
Virtually no one. And so to me, that is something that we can absolutely take from that is, look, it's so easy, and we live in LA, which is so much, you could say, the land of me in so many ways,
Isn't it?
And taking a moment to think about where someone else is coming from is huge. And
moves mountains.
It does. And
it's that empathy.
It is. And it's going to help. It's going to help the person who's being seen.
Sure, exactly. Because sometimes that's all you want.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you need in a moment.
And I just feel like
he did that for Sansa.
He did.
She just wanted somebody to listen to her.
He did that for Shay, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
You're
right. She would have been written off by all accounts by anyone else.
Absolutely. And now, granted, she had a little something. She had a good spark.
Sure.
They had awesome chemistry.
Yeah.
But he really did see her. He didn't see her just as a whore. And she tested him a few times. You just think I'm that. He's like, no, I really don't.
Yeah, he proved it.
Yeah, and he did prove it.
Yeah. I want to get into some more specifics,
Please.
but before we do, I want to do a bad guy break.
Okay.
And so this is the portion of the show, if you guys haven't seen it yet, where we're going to talk about a specific antagonist, a fictional character from history who would have benefited from understanding that their weaknesses can be used as their strengths. So Joe's going to kind of chime in here. I want you to kind of start thinking about popular fictional antagonists from history that would have benefited from understanding that their weaknesses could be their strengths, but they didn't. And I'm going to give you 4 hints, and then we'll see if you can guess it.
Okay.
All right.
Throw it on me.
So the first hint is the year. This movie came out in 1980. So this is a 1980 film.
Okay. Okay.
So this is a 1980 film. The medium, that's obviously the second hint. It is a film.
Okay.
So we're in 1980, and we're in the film
That's
genre.
only 2 hints? Damn, okay.
Yep.
I only get 4?
Yep, so now you're at 3, and it's the genre. So this is horror. So it's a horror film from the 1980s. Start getting those gears working. I see them working in there.
Okay.
You're thinking about the 80s
I'm
movies.
thinking Jamie Lee Curtis.
Horror films you saw. Okay, and then the actor that played this character is, I believe, Ari Lehman. Hope I'm saying that right. Ari Lehman is the actor who played this character.
Huh.
Do you have any guesses as to who this bad guy, quote unquote, could be?
I just keep thinking about Halloween from 1980. I'm trying to think of what else I saw back in 1980 that would have been horror.
And there are so many. There are so many.
For sure.
So this, especially this theme itself of turning your weaknesses into strengths, there's a lot of flawed characters with a lot of apparent weaknesses that never kind of resolve those things. So you're at a wide range here. So
what about what year was The Shining?
That
came later, I think. I think
That
that came
might
later.
be late 80s, maybe?
Yeah, that came much later.
Or mid 80s, 85 or something. That's one of my favorite
Am I
movies of all time.
penalized if I don't guess who?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Let's give it to the listeners here. So the film and the character I'm looking for is Friday the 13th.
Ah, I was gonna say
Jason
Nightmare on Elm Street. but
Jason
okay.
Voorhees. I feel like it could probably fit into any of these guys.
I was saying.
So any guess
I was
was
saying
good.
Halloween, and I was thinking Friday the 13th. I swear I was.
That's what they all say.
I know. It's true.
So Friday the 13th. So just a little backstory here. Jason Voorhees is bullied due to his birth defects and physical deformities.
Right.
He evades some kids and jumps into a lake, but he's unable to swim, and that's when he drowns. And so when he comes back as this like undead monster who can kill everyone, his only weakness is water.
Got it.
So we see throughout the film and throughout successive films in this. I think there's been 1,000 of them at this point.
Roughly 1,000.
Yeah. So I've only seen a handful, but we see all the time that water is just one thing. Like it's just his crux. Like that's how he's defeated every time is that somebody, figures out and uses water. And so it's like, in terms of that, it's especially speaking of his sort of background and how he became who he was. If you put yourself in his shoes, if you're somebody who, there's been other movies that have tackled this. I think Wonder was a movie that came out recently that kind of,
I haven't seen that.
Ben Stiller, I want to say, was in it.
Okay.
I might be completely wrong on that, but this physical deformity, I chose this character specifically because Tyrion, by all means, has a physical deformity. So he's a dwarf. That's where his quote unquote perceived weakness would be.
Right.
So in this case, Jason's born with these physical deformities, and he's bullied for it. And it drives him to his literal death.
Right.
I mean, these kids were so bullish that he jumps into the lake and he drowns. I mean, what a tragedy. And so, what would you say to someone who is in this position? Tyrion's a great example of somebody to look at where he's not defined by being a dwarf. He's not defined by being the imp. He's not defined by being the comic relief. He kind of turns that to his advantage and uses that to his strengths. Jason Voorhees wasn't able to do that. He dies. Now, he was a kid. It's different. Sure.
Brutal.
But Tyrion, by all means, was a child at once.
Yeah.
And became an adult. So, there must be something to it. There must be some sort of, is it an attitude? Is it a perspective? What do you think it is about the fact that Tyrion was able to make the most of it?
This is one of these. I think it's an excellent question. I think it's probably an age-old question too.
Sure.
If we can crack that nut on this show, high five to us.
Sure.
Because I think it's I think there are so many factors, just of what someone's particular makeup. Just someone's character that they're born with. But again, like for Tyrion, he had financial support, if nothing else.
Sure.
So if Jason had like a family that didn't know how to cope, like maybe there wasn't a dad, there could be so many factors, and there weren't. It sounds like he might have been just a kid who fell through the cracks too, because maybe he had teachers who were just overworked and couldn't, put in the extra effort.
Yeah.
And I think there are people that fall through the cracks in every culture, every day, all the time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So what is it that's going to be that little bit of difference to that someone can come out of that? I do think it could be just someone like an adult who would show interest.
I think I was getting ready to say
some kind of kindness.
As you were talking, my gears were working, and I really started to think about the importance of parenting.
For sure.
I mean, knowing and being aware. It's so funny. I saw a video the other day I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw a video of this guy who was encouraging his kid to roll his wheelchair up into the house. There was like a lip, and he couldn't get over it, and he's like, try again. And then when he finally did it, the dad was jumping up and down. He was screaming. They were happy. They were excited. When you have something like that, when you have that sort of presence, that allows you to believe in yourself. You're not looking at, oh, I'm different. Oh, I'm deformed. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. Yep. Instead, you're being built up. And so maybe in Jason's case, I don't know the whole lore of the story, of his backstory, but you're right. Maybe he just didn't have that. You know, he just didn't have that sort of voice, sort of, you know, figure that could build him up.
Yeah.
He just didn't have that. And so that's what led to his demise and why he comes back and starts avenging his...
And boy, did he. But he made such a great franchise, you know?
Thank God for it.
That I couldn't guess.
So many times, yeah. But so I want to get back to Tyrion here, and I want to really focus on some specifics. I wrote down a couple of scenes here that really I think showcase how he is able to turn his sort of quote unquote perceived weaknesses into strength. So the first one I want to talk about is he's able to. We talked about Sansa. And his relationship there. That was something I saw. So how about early on when he escapes his execution by requesting a trial by combat?
Well, that was brilliant.
How witty, how wise, how no one would have thought of that.
Right.
And he's able to sort of use his wit and his intellect to literally save his own life.
Right. And well, what a bizarre circumstance that was, because he was falsely imprisoned or captured, if you will, by Catelyn Stark. Mm-hmm. She was going to make some other pretty bad mistakes. But anyway, and so was Rob. But anyway,
sure.
Boy, did they pay for it. That was incredibly clever. And I mean, it caught the people who were present, if you will, the other characters by surprise. It caught us by surprise, the viewers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We weren't thinking about the brawn that he had in his back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
That was fantastic. And that's where being, super clever.
That's kind of the first instance I think I can remember in the show, because that was early on. Was that season 1?
Yes.
So that's early on where I think I already liked him as a character, but once that happened, there was something about him that was different now that I really liked, because he's my favorite character from the series.
Mine too.
Without question. And so, favorite actor too.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But he just, in that moment, to be 2 steps ahead of everyone else, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's almost like the save the cat moment. I like this character now. I want to be, I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
I instantly root for him in that scenario. And I wonder if the writer of the book, was it George R. Martin?
Yeah.
If that was his intention.
I'm going to guess and say yes. George Martin, from what I understand, this was his favorite character, Tyrion. And from what I also understand, the showrunners, the producers, stayed really true through the first 4 seasons.
Okay,
to Tyrion's character.
Okay.
So
thank God they did.
And yeah, for sure.
The more they would have stayed.
Yeah.
To the writing.
No kidding. So what was it about that though that really, because was it just that he was clever and got himself out of a situation? What was it about that really sold you on him?
I think the fact that he, at that point, and it's to the theme that we're discussing, people undermine him. He's overlooked. He's written off.
Absolutely true.
Everyone in that room was ready to see
him fly.
Fly, right? And so for him at the last beat, at the last second, to trick, almost cleverly pull one over on everyone there.
Yeah.
He immediately became bigger than everyone despite his height.
He did.
Yeah, if in stature and physicality, he's the smallest person in the room. With intellect, wit, and wisdom, he's the tallest.
Absolutely true.
And in that moment, it really shined. And I think I want to talk about another moment too.
Yeah.
His alliance with Daenerys and his strategic insights. So once he finally finds himself there, and he aligns himself with Daenerys, they form an alliance, and he's able to give her insight.
Yep.
Much as he, to his point and what you said earlier, the only person that stood up to Joffrey as, hand of the king. So he's always this person that you trust, that even you're a leader like Daenerys or Joffrey, if you want to call him that. you're a king, queen, you still need an advisor, the hand of the king, that's supposed to give you,
True.
knowledge, and because you can sometimes be blinded, and so it's good to have that second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's able to be that for multiple people throughout the show, but specifically Daenerys, who kind of needs a little bit of guidance. She needs a little bit of wisdom.
And she lost Joran,
Yeah.
at the
Right.
end of season 4.
Sure.
Which was rough.
Sure.
So that really left a massive void
Yeah.
for her.
Mm-hmm.
Because she becomes, if you will, more Targaryen as time goes on.
Right.
And so she needed someone to temper her.
Yeah.
And Tyrion was perfect for that. I don't know that George Martin got to the point where those two ever met in the books.
Wow. Okay.
I believe that was a season 6 thing, which went beyond the books.
Wow.
So
How
I'm
interesting.
not exactly sure about that.
Huh. I wonder if he would have given his blessing on that.
I
I don't know how involved he was in those last 2 seasons.
I had the
I
impression
assume
not much.
yes.
But,
I assume very little just because of what happened. Does he plan on finishing the books or no way now?
Well, now I don't know. Initially, yes, but several years have passed, and
how
I
would
don't think
you
there's-
then
write that book after that's been shot
Exactly,
already?
yeah. What are you gonna be
'Cause
like?
Can't do any of that. those
hey, look
things.
at me, this is what it should have been. It's kind of like
Right.
an
Exactly.
FU right to the
I don't think
creators.
he'd want to do that.
But anyway, let's get back
But
to
yeah.
Tyrion here. But
Yeah.
just that, I guess we can button up just him as an advisor in general. Just being the smartest person in the room wherever he went. Speaks volumes to his character, speaks volumes to how he's not defined by his size. He's not defined by being the imp or the one who loves whores or drinks himself to death.
Absolutely.
He's, no matter what, the person that you turn to.
For sure.
I know we all have, throughout our life had people like this where we turn to it for advice. We trust that their opinion will lead us in the right direction.
And I think that's an excellent point. And 2 things I'm thinking of. One is, one of the reasons you can trust Tyrion is because he does tell it like it is. He has the courage. That guy, there's little spine, strong spine.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, he's got a huge spine.
Yeah.
And, he was one of the few who also wanted his father to love him, but he stood up to Tywin.
Yeah. What a great moment.
So he was a straight shooter, and people knew that. And he was also, because he understood human nature, he could look at things a little differently and give better advice than just charge, and we need to beat them down now. He could be more nuanced, more subtle. He could understand motivations really well. There's a quote from season 3, I think. This is when Shay, they'd already had the battle, and he defended the Red Keep, although his father got all the accolades for it.
Okay.
He got slashed and he almost got killed by the mountain.
Okay.
And he's recovering now, and he got no credit
Sure.
for defending King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
And Shay wanted him to go off to I can't think of her home, and he said he didn't want to go, and not Ventos, can't think of it.
Something like that.
He said, "I'm good at bad people."
Oh. Wow, I like that.
I like that a lot. I'm good at bad people.
I'm good at bad people. He's good at understanding and empathizing with people who are...
Yeah, and maybe he'll understand they're bad, but he doesn't let that emotionally cloud him or cloud him emotionally. It doesn't make him think, well, just because you're bad, I'm going to have this,
Sure.
He just, it's like he could be open or more relaxed or more...
There's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about someone who can be that way around people who are, Yeah, quote unquote bad or difficult
Yeah.
or different.
Yeah.
That's a superpower. That's a skill, an asset.
And the fact that he knew it,
Right.
and that's part of why he didn't want to leave King's Landing.
Sure.
And he didn't want to go running off with Shay because he also said, I'm good at the game.
Yeah.
I'm good at it.
He knows it.
Yeah.
I think I love that. I love that quote by him, and that says a lot about his character and who he is. And I think there's one thing that I remember also coming back to what you said about him defending King's Landing and not getting credit for it. That too speaks again to his wit, his intellect, his cleverness, his wisdom, that despite what everyone expected, and again, speaking back to what you were saying about everyone's so much just like charge, just
Right.
fight. He has that brilliant plan with
Yes.
the wildfire
Yes.
in the sea that wins them
Yeah.
that encounter.
Yes, it did.
The Battle of, I wrote it here.
Oh, you did?
I wrote it because I
at
knew I wouldn't remember it. Defending who the Blackwater, the Battle of Blackwater.
Yes. Oh, I
Yes,
should've
that
known
was
that.
that was what it was. How iconic! But just the fact that it was him
Yeah.
of anyone else,
Yep.
the King's Guard, whatever,
And
anyone.
and who bailed really at a very crucial point? Do you remember who bailed? Joffrey.
Yep.
Oh, my mom's calling.
Yeah, the leader.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so here's this literally this little man who has to step up and lead the troops, and he did it. He did it.
Controversial question for you.
Please.
I think in my head,
Yeah.
I know who makes the best king of the realm.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Do you think that Tyrion would have been, at the end of season 8, the best person to be the king?
If he'd been the same Tyrion from season 6, yes. Because he did some things in 7 and 8 that were like, wait, what?
Sure.
What have you done with Tyrion?
Sure.
But yes,
I think we're built
absolutely.
We're built
Absolutely.
up throughout the series to believe that Jon is the person
Right.
that we're all rooting for,
Right.
that we all want to
I
have.
was
the
rooting
throne.
for Danny for a while too.
I was sure
You know?
until the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Until the last season,
Where-
really.
where she popped a gasket somewhere.
Yeah. Somehow something happened.
something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think, and I love his character as well. But if I'm
too.
just
Me too.
thinking from the perspective of what would have been the best for everyone, the intellect, the wisdom that we're
Yep.
talking about, the
He
wit,
absolutely would have been
the
the best.
humor, the humility, the good with bad people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you need with a
Yeah.
leader,
Yeah.
to be good with bad people.
Yeah.
So much of your job as the king or the queen is not this like glamorous, palace sitting.
Yeah.
It's dealing with the muck, sitting there and having your townspeople come up to you and say, "This happened. I need a few shekel for my cows that were slaughtered."
Totally agree.
It's dirty work.
Totally agree.
And if you have somebody who's like Tyrion, who's there, who's able to understand these people and empathize,
Yep.
what more could you want?
I totally agree with you. I'm going to speculate that Tywin sent Tyrion to be the hand for Joffrey.
Mm-hmm.
I bet Tyrion would agree with you. Sorry, Tywin would agree with you. Because all of a sudden he saw something in Tyrion that he didn't see in Jaime, that didn't. Cersei, hell no.
Joffrey, absolutely.
Joffrey, absolutely not.
Huh.
So, but he would never, ever let himself admit that. Not a chance.
Sure.
No way.
Sure.
But the fact that he sent him to be Joffrey's hand, that was huge.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Mm.
Who would be the hand for Tyrion?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know that I could answer that.
I don't think, from the people that were there at the end,
I know. Varys?
if it was possible, see, I don't know though. I would say Jon, but
Yeah, Jon wouldn't. I don't know if he'd take that job.
I don't know that he would either. What do you think? Do you think Jon would be Knight of the King's Guard?
If he would take the gig, I don't think he'd be a very good hand. Jon Snow. Wow,
Yeah.
I did just say that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean he's more of a leader. He's more
of a leader.
he can't be second, I
No.
don't think. Yeah.
No, you got to give him some kind of realm to run.
Yeah,
or
no,
something.
that's a great question you raise. If Tyrion were king,
Yeah.
who would be his hand? There's no one more wise.
No, and that's right. I mean, I was saying Varys. Varys, is that his name?
Viserys?
Viserys.
Viserys,
Sorry. But because he actually, to me, he was very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
Are we operating in a world where
You can bring
don't
back
know if-
the dead?
no, we can do that. I don't think back then women could serve as hand of the king, could they?
But if you're going to have a dwarf as your first king,
That's true.
Why not have?
All bets are off.
So-
I mean, I support it. I would support, if it were possible, Sansa as the hand.
That would be an interesting.
That's an interesting dynamic, but again, I think it comes back to they understand each other.
Absolutely true.
I don't know if she's wise enough for that, but there's
think she'd
really
be a really
nobody
interesting
that
choice.
that's
What about Arya?
for what she's been through with the whole was it Man with No Face
Yep.
and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's cunning, and she's
So cunning. I loved her story arc.
yes,
Her story arc was my favorite. Tyrion
Yeah.
was my favorite character. Her story arc was my favorite.
couldn't agree more.
And I also thought she had the best ending in the show.
Absolutely
My
agree.
personal opinion.
Absolutely agree.
And she was at the end. I wanted to follow her.
Sure,
I wanted to
of
see
anyone.
where she went.
Yeah.
So would she make a good hand? I don't see her as someone who would take a job.
Sure,
That'd
she
be
does-
like
she
2
doesn't-
to 6 for her.
No, she doesn't want to be
You can't
defined
tie her
by-
down.
Yeah.
There's just
What
no
about
way.
Bran? If Tyrion ends up as king, I mean, Bran has what is it, all-seeing eye or whatever it is, the Raven eye thing.
Yeah, I could see where Bran would almost
That's
be
useful.
like, he would almost be like your brother who's taken too many bong hits. 'Cause he's just got so much trippy stuff going on. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure he'd be reliable.
I don't think so.
Is this a vision or is this real?
Exactly. I don't know if we're going to be able to answer that one, but it's because I love the idea of Tyrion as king.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. I wonder. Hey, I would love to sit down. I'd love to just pass by George R. Martin at some point and just say to him, "What would you have done? What was the plan? How did you see it?" I just want to know. I just
Yeah.
want to know from the mind of the person that created this and wrote so many beautifully crafted stories and
amazing.
characters.
Amazing.
What was his plan? Did he have a plan?
Supposedly, if it's starting to come back to me, I think he was involved with advising seasons 7, and I think he definitely advised on season 8. So I think he was pretty good with where it went. I think the execution was expedited. I think the showrunners wanted to
Get on out of there
they
quickly.
wanted to get out of there.
So do you think then you would be okay with the ending as it is now? Had they had more time? Had they had 2 more seasons? Give them 10 seasons
It was
if that's the outcome.
potentially it was hard. I had a hard time making sense of what Dany did at the very end.
Yeah, I think that was everyone's gripe of
Okay, winter's coming for the majority of 8 seasons.
yeah.
How long did that battle take? 15 minutes?
Yeah,
Come on.
it all amounts
Come
to
on.
that. How they built it up.
I mean, that was ridiculous.
My favorite moment from the show, this is a little bit sidetracked, but my favorite moment from the entirety of the show is the Bran flashback when he finds out that Jon Snow is who he is.
That's awesome.
The way that they cut that, the way they shot
That was
the way that
really well done.
everything about it. I remember getting like goosebumps almost watching, because I remember watching them when they came out, like Sunday
Right,
night, like
right.
going over to my buddy's house, my buddy
Right.
Alex, and sitting down and like, okay, it's coming on now.
Yeah.
Man, what
Yeah.
a awesome thing that was.
That
but
was an
but
awesome
that
thing.
moment I think was my favorite of the series. It was perfectly executed. I want those guys back for the way that it ended. Like I wanted so badly.
I hear you.
It's
Speculation.
one of the most incredible shows of all time.
Well, to me, through season 7, it was my favorite show.
Yeah.
It's up there with some others that we'll discuss at some point.
Yeah.
And season 8 it hurt. It was painful. I mean, I also felt I think probably everyone was exhausted too,
Sure, after a decade of
My God.
that show.
They'd given all their blood, sweat, and tears to that.
Yeah. And
Particularly Kit Harington,
mhm.
because he was, he didn't get to die in season 3, or you know what I mean.
He just kept keeping
he
him around.
just kept going, and
those people, they
Emilia
weren't-
Clarke too.
When they're, I don't know what their contracts were like, but you're kind of sewn in. You don't have a lot of wiggle room, and so I know a lot of them wanted to do a lot of other stuff.
Sure.
So many of them now are doing other stuff.
Sure.
So at that point, I'm sure there is a level of, okay, I'm in the largest show on the planet Earth currently, but I'm exhausted.
Yep.
I want something different. I want to play a different character. As an actor, you want that. You
For
want
sure.
something not what you're used to, not your daily. If you're coming back again and again and again with the same character over and over and over again, how much can you bring to it?
Exactly.
How much difference can you bring to it? The writing has to be excellent
Agreed.
for that. So I'm sure all of them
Agreed.
were, when those scripts came out on that final season, were like,
I know.
oh,
I know. Because I mean, we as viewers and those of us who love the show could it's like that character wouldn't say that, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It goes against every fiber of your being,
It
for
does.
6 seasons.
It does.
But do you have anything else to add for Mr. Tyrion here before we go into our recommendation and wrap this pod up?
I don't. I just huge appreciation for the show and what they did. George Martin for creating a character who was so much fun.
Oh, man.
He ate up every scene he was in.
Absolutely couldn't agree more.
Every single scene. It was amazing.
I loved it. I ate it up.
Peter Dinklage is a phenom.
Absolutely.
He was absolutely. Can you say he was built for that role? I don't know, but he nailed it, and he gave it air and life in such a fantastic way that I'm thankful, and I think that his character of Tyrion, there's a lot to draw upon.
Yeah.
Even though he had the silver spoon, there was so much adversity that he faced.
And he overcame all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was very human
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah. We there's a lot that we can learn from Tyrion as a character.
Sure.
From the show, but from Tyrion as a character specifically. There's just so much that we can take from it.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it partly an incredible character.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I want to give a recommendation that's kind of similar.
Cool.
And this is something we just discussed.
I think I
You
see
just
it there.
you just came, you just told me about this. So this is something that's kind of along the same lines of somebody who
Yes.
has these perceived weaknesses,
Yes.
but turns around and uses them to their strengths.
Yep.
And that's the 2015 TV series on Netflix, Daredevil. I know this is a favorite of yours.
Love it.
You've been preaching to me to watch it. Now I have to because
Yeah,
it's
you
a
do.
part of the show now. And then eventually we can have an episode on
love
Daredevil.
that. Yeah, for
But
sure.
This is a guy, and you can speak to this. Matt Murdock is blind, but uses his heightened other senses as his strengths to defeat evil.
Yeah.
And so here's this person who's, by all means, you see has a perceived definite weakness.
Yep.
He's blind.
Yep.
How can this person be so effective, be so fight for good and against evil and all odds? That in and of itself creates an interesting dynamic.
Agreed. And that character, Matt Murdock, is a lawyer by day, Daredevil by night. And so if you think about it, he puts on a suit, a suit, not a superhero suit, but a suit to go to an office
Yeah.
to fight
Yeah.
for the little folk, which is what he did. And you could tell his law firm wasn't really killing it.
Yeah.
They were kind of hurting for clients.
Yeah.
But he was someone who really wanted to support the underdog, those less fortunate, those who are marginalized and not seen.
Yeah.
And then to do what he did, one of the things that one of the reasons I told Ryan I liked that series so much is that he has all these great fight scenes, but man, he gets hurt. He gets tired.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have some kind of superhuman strength. He does have senses that are no one probably has those really,
Yeah, yeah,
because he is
sure.
legally blind.
Sure.
But through his senses, it's, he can throw him a cup, he can catch it.
Yeah, you have to rely on your other senses. Your other senses become strengthened and heightened because you have that lack of vision.
Exactly. And his are, up to 12.
Yeah.
But it's again, and that's a really good point. It's what he does with his adversity, and he doesn't make it about poor me.
Yeah, which is easy to do.
Yeah, for sure. He's like, there are other people who have it worse than I do. I know I can help them. Wow,
I love that. Profound.
it is. It's amazing.
Profound. Yeah,
It's such a simple. You could say it's such a simple decision.
yeah,
I wish I would make it.
Yeah.
More,
Sure,
in my
same.
life. Because it's easy for us to get wrapped up into me, myself, and I,
especially in this city,
especially
in LA. So there you have
self-love.
it. Daredevil 2015. You can
Yeah.
watch it on Netflix. I believe
Yes.
there's 3 seasons.
I think so.
Yeah, so you can watch it all in its entirety now. But the power of the underdog, man.
Absolutely true.
Tyrion, Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
So many stories across, time
Agreed.
we can think of. But
Agreed.
go watch that if you want something else. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
This has been a blast.
Yeah, it has
I
been.
really enjoyed this. This is our
Yeah, me
first
too.
episode together.
Yes, it's true.
And I think it flew by. We're
did.
over an hour now, and I'm like, man, we got to wrap this thing up.
Yes, we do.
We could talk about Game of Thrones and Tyrion all day and all night.
Yes, we
There's
do.
a lot to be
But
seen
don't
there.
worry, we won't. Yeah.
If you haven't seen that, obviously HBO.
we just ruined it,
We just
but-
ruined everything for you. But
You should still see it.
thanks for being here and joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thank you.
And as always, don't be afraid to take a step back from your own life, because you're the main character of your own life. And sometimes the answers you've been looking for are lying just beyond the frame. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Cheers.